Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and today we are thrilled to welcome one of the stars, as well as the writer and director of the upcoming sci-fi movie Roswell Delirium. Please help us welcome Lisa Whelchel and Richard Bakewell. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're kind of going to go back and forth between the two of you, but
Sure.
To start with, this is for Richard. I read about the movie and looked at the trailer. It looks like so much fun, intense, really creepy as well, and also vague enough to kind of not know what you're going to be dealing with, and doing a lot of guessing through the film, I think. For those of you who don't know what it's about, can you tell us a little bit about the movie in a brief synopsis?
Yeah, so basically it takes place in the 1980s. It's kind of like an alternate world where all of a sudden the Soviet Union kind of descends like 6 dozen warheads to the US and kind of like attacks us. And then, we kind of like go 2 years later into the world where we try to like pretend like things are normal, but then it's really not. And everybody's starting to suffer radiation poisoning. And then the one main girl of the story, Mayday, starts to, believe like everybody else that Area 51 is destroyed and there's a place called Space Rock that can heal people. And everybody kind of goes on this journey to find it. And in doing so, Mayday starts to believe it herself, looking for her friend, and she gets like severe radiation poisoning. And then things get really dramatic. And then she starts to slowly like lose all of her, like kidneys start to fail and everything. And then her mom begins grieving so badly that she believes that I can take my daughter to the aliens to save her at Space Rock and give her to them, and then they'll save her. But we don't know if they'll ever bring her back. That's the question to be answered. So,
Wow. I mean, the trailer looks fantastic, and I'm really excited to when we all get a chance to see it. So Lisa, when did you first hear about the project, and how did you become involved?
I guess I heard about the project really just a couple of months before they started filming, which was summer and a half ago. And I was sent the script, and it's not that I don't want to work. I do want to work. I love to work, but I'm not inclined. I'm not looking to work. No other reason other than to be honest, most of the stuff that comes my way is not the kind of stuff that I would be interested in doing. And so, I got the script and it was like, oh, well, this actually looks pretty cool. But I thought, nah, I don't really want to do it. And then Rick and my manager just kept talking and having conversations, and it got more and more attractive. And then when I finally was able to really get a sense of kind of being on, it really wasn't until I was on the set. I mean, this was so kind of, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yeah, oh, this looks interesting. Okay, why not? And then it's kind of built. My excitement has built over time, being on the sets, seeing that really the caliber of the child actors, and of course Rick, and then seeing the trailer was like, oh wow, this is actually legit. And so, I mean, just really, to be honest, my excitement has grown substantially over time. And then on another little kind of personal note, I remarried a few years ago and have a little stepson, my little bonus son, and he's about the same age as the other child actors. And my scenes were in the schoolroom. And so I asked Rick if Leo could be a background actor. And he was so sweet about that. And so really, you ask anybody, the way to any mother's heart is through their child, and even if it's a mother's child. And so this is not only professionally, but very personally, very exciting for me as this comes to fruition, and eventually the public gets to see it.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, you know, we all know you've had such a great career, a lot of fantastic roles, but this type of film does seem like a departure for you. But you know, it sounds like you've come around. Would you be interested in doing more sci-fi elements in the future?
I'm not even a sci-fi fan. I mean, I don't watch a lot of sci-fi movies. I don't read a lot of sci-fi books. Um, it really wasn't the sci-fi element that sold me. It was the psychological kind of thriller element of the movie that sold me.
Hmm.
And so that's what I'm most excited about because I mean, this is, I think will be very entertaining. I've only seen the trailer, but I'm sure it will be very entertaining. The script is amazing just from what I've seen of the final outcome. It's amazing. But really it's the I don't want to give away anything, but it is the part that it feels like an intelligent sci-fi film. Not that other sci-fi films aren't intelligent, but this one has it's not just purely for entertainment. It feels like it's also working on a psychological level, on an emotional level. It's working on an intellectual level. It's just really working a lot deeper than I would think, at least my judgment of other sci-fi movies.
Hmm.
Well, Rick, this question's for you. Now, Lisa just mentioned about the cast, a lot of the former child actors. So, as a real who's besides Lisa, there's Anthony Michael Hall, Reginald Vel Johnson, Dee Wallace, Reb Brown. So, I was reading that Anthony Michael Hall is a co-producer. So, how did you first get him involved, and how did the idea come about to cast all these, classic stars?
Well, we kind of had almost everybody cast, like Lisa and Reggie and Sam and Dee, and then, we needed somebody to play the therapist, and I really wanted to put a known actress as the older version of Firefly, but then the girl Ashton came in and just did such an amazing job that everybody was in the room almost crying in the audition. So I was like, well, we have to cast her, so now we have to like kind of like divert the plan and like put her in there an unknown and then find somebody else to be that, another role. And I just reached out to his manager, and then his manager, like, I think called me back by mistake. And then he's like, I'm like, this is Rick. And he goes, oh, who are you again? And then I explained to him, and then, I sent them the script, and then within like I think 2 days, Michael and I were on the phone talking, and then went to the smokehouse, and then just kind of like worked out, hey, we want to be a part of this together. And then, he was all about it and loved the script like everybody else. And, we have really some stellar child actors in this film. I was kind of worried taking on so many like, young child
Mhm.
actors. And then like we did like a day rehearsals right before we shot, and we ran all the scenes like twice. And I was like, I looked to my producer Larissa, and I was like, they are so good, we could have recorded this today. Like they were just that good. Because I was worried, I'm like, they're gonna be kind of like like working with Lisa is gonna be maybe just too much celebrity for them, and they're just so young. And but like they really just killed it and did an amazing job, and you would have never known that they hadn't been on set for 10 years. They were so good.
But was the plan always, I mean, you had in mind always to get like the classic stars as well to fill some of these roles?
Yeah, I kind of took a blueprint from what I call, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, where you have all these like young characters who no one knows who they are, and then having like these legacy iconic,
Right.
people from the 80s to really like help tell the story through their eyes. But I just wanted like this younger version to kind of come in and just like tell this story, because really it's a mother-daughter story. And you don't really have many stories now where a child actor carries the entire story, like, and Kylie Levine plays the Mayday. And I can't remember a film where a girl carried the movie since like My Girl with Anna Klumsky. Like it doesn't happen anymore. So I
Mhm.
really wanted to do something different, and I knew that I could trust her with the film because I've worked with her before. But it's just like to watch the other kids elevate and level up with their performance too because of
Right.
her. It's like, and then everybody else they're working with. It was just fantastic to watch.
Mm. Well, Lisa, like we've just mentioned that many of the stars have this had this long successful career as well. Had you worked with any of them before this, and what was it like to work with them now?
No, I
Uh,
haven't. worked
Oh,
with,
go ahead.
yeah, I hadn't worked with any of them before. And because my scenes were just in the classroom and I worked mostly just with the kids. And so
Okay.
I'm excited, to see, I mean, just even from the trailer, I mean, Dee Wallace, man, she got me from the trailer. It's like, wow,
Yeah, that was really moving and impressive
amazing.
for such a small little bit, man. I have to agree with you
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm on the screen, but I'm also, I'm also going to be, I'm a viewer. I'm going to be, this is a new genre for me. This is a story. I haven't seen it all come together. I'm going to get to pretty soon, but, I'm actually, from the viewer's point of view, very excited.
Well, Rick, the film I was reading, the film has comps of terms of endearment and close encounters. So the description is like, a mix of genres. So I read that it was a very personal for you. So how does it you come up with like the tie-in concept for two such vastly different films, and how did your own experiences help in the making of this movie?
Well, I think as like a writer of the film, you have to really dive into like your own like personal experiences. And for me, like the story came about because I worked on a documentary called Before I Die with kids who had cancer doing their bucket list.
Oh,
And one kid had cancer 9 times. They called him the cancer fighting ninja. And the last time he just couldn't fight anymore. And his mother
wow.
said, if you want to go, you can go.
Uh,
And I thought that was just so powerful for her to say that, knowing that that's the last thing that she wants. But she was trying to be brave for him to say, it's okay, you fought so hard. And then I had this idea in my head, like, well, medicine couldn't save him, doctors couldn't save him. So what if aliens could save him? And so like that's when I kind of started the idea and writing and creating the whole thing. And I really wanted the movie to feel like a couple different, films. I wanted to feel like it's an 80s film, and I wanted to feel like you were watching this movie made in 1980s full of nostalgia, but really it takes a detour in like the second act. And then by the third act, it's a very sad, emotional roller coaster. And I don't think people are prepared for, the depths that it kind of goes to. But that was the whole point, always to kind of like give the audience to laugh with the characters and then make you just feel the heartache of what they're going through.
mm. Um, you also worked on Cops. What are some of the more memorable moments that you experienced on that show, and how difficult is it to film these events going on?
Well, I people ask about that show all the time. I did it for like 2 years. And, the hardest stuff about that show is what you don't see on TV.
Mm,
There's a lot of calls that we go to where it's, there's a lot of the domestic violence calls, and there's a lot of stuff that happens to children that is not worth filming, but it's very traumatic to go into a house where some very horrible things have happened. And, it's like you go from call to call and you never have time to process this stuff. And, I held the kid once when he was dying, he got hit by a car and his brain was hanging out of his head. And he like collapsed in my arms, and the cop was like, drop him to the ground. I'm like, I'm not gonna drop him. I don't know what to do. And he kept saying, I gotta go home. My mom's gonna kill me. And then he just started to go out, and that's like a lot of the stuff that you see on a day-to-day basis. And then you don't even process it because you just go to the next call. And then like, maybe like 6 months later, all of a sudden it starts to hit you. And then, myself, I had a long battle with PTSD. And I didn't know what it was at first because back then no one even talked about it.
mm, wow.
Well, I can imagine how this could play a part into the movie as well. But yeah, a lot of this film takes place in the '80s. So, what is it about that decade that appeals to both of you, and why do you think it still fascinates so many people today?
Lisa, I'll let you take that one.
Well, I loved the 80s, obviously. I mean, it was a good time for me. I miss the big hair and the shoulder pads and I don't miss pantyhose, that's for sure. That was a thing. I'm really happy about letting go of that. Um, I mean, it was a great era. I tell you what, I wish I hadn't been a kid in the 80s. I wish I had been older and appreciated the 80s more than I do now, more than I did then. But I mean, it was a great time. We were kind of in a, if especially if you are you know, middle class or upper middle class, white, kind of just basic American, that everybody, you know, privileged, all that. You could totally be blind to the fact that underneath all that, there was a lot of heartache going on. And so, you know, it was a good time for me, but it was not a good time for everybody. So I do think that maybe there's something about, you know, the same reason people watch sitcoms, the same reason people watch MeTV with or same reason people, you know, listen to the pop culture retro. We want to remember the glossy kind of veneer of a time, and it's very easy to not actually think about what was going on underneath that. But it's nice to kind of go back and pretend, even if it's just lying to ourselves, that what we see on TV in the 80s was actually what was really happening, and everybody was happy and everybody was successful and everybody was able to, in 17 minutes and a couple of commercials, have a group hug and a lot of laughs in between. That was life. And so I mean I think it's almost like an escape drug. I think that some retro kind of television and in movies, it's a little bit of an escape drug, because we can we don't have to face the hard things that are going on in our life now, and we don't have to look at the hard things that were going on then underneath the, you know, kind of 80s. Oh, it's all good, and let's get all have our own little theme song.
Well put, man.
Yeah.
Well, you know, of course, you've talked about the 80s being good to you. You became ingrained in the public consciousness during that time. So when you're filming the movie that takes place in the decade, does it feel a bit surreal to you? And also, are there any Easter eggs planted within the movie to reference you or any of the other stars?
I mean, I think the stars are the Easter eggs, for one thing. And you know, the great thing about retro stars, which are oftentimes, they are characters that became childhood friends, because most of us were the characters that are most beloved to us are the ones that we met when we were most impressionable and when we were kids. And oftentimes latchkey kids really felt like these were their families on television. And so they're probably going to find Easter eggs that weren't even planted on purpose, that show up just because they just, you know, there's just something about the impact and the impressions from your childhood. They lodge really deep. And, you know, we project onto whatever is happening in our life, what's going on inside. So I think that the viewer, the moviegoers are going to find a lot more than that was even there. And I think that's going to be a really sweet thing as we find out, oh, gosh, how'd that get in there? I guess you're right. That is an Easter egg.
You kind of mentioned it a little bit before, so I do want to talk about the younger stars, you know, and I hope I'm pronouncing the names right. Kylie Levian and Ashton Selecki. So they play the same character years apart. So how did they come to be cast? You said you'd seen them in something else?
Yeah, so I worked with Kylie in a movie 5 years ago called The Rabbit Hole, is a short film. You know, she was like 8 years old, very bubbly, nervous, you know, and we were bringing in a bunch of kids, and I remember her, like, she stood out above everybody else because there's a moment where she like messes up in the audition, and she goes, "Can I just start again?" And she's like, and like just like brought it down and just like refocused, and it was amazing to watch an 8-year-old just do that. And I was like, I'm gonna cast her. I knew right away. And
Really?
you know, I just loved her, and she was so easy to work with, and like, you know, she took direction so well. And I'm like, to be 8 years old and not have to like have her mom come over, her dad, and help and explain what I'm trying to ask of her. She just got it, you know, and most kids don't get it that early on. So I was very impressed with her work ethic and just understanding. Um, so then when we cast her in this movie, it was like, how do I find somebody just as talented and who looks like her? and that is a hard task, you know.
Mm.
And Ashton was a wild card because we brought in so many other girls, and then I was like, I just don't, I'm not finding, you know, the older version of Kylie. So, you know, when she came in, she did a fantastic job, and she was our wild card. And then, you know, I gave her a couple notes, and then she took the notes. You know, she like turned around and asked for 10 seconds, and then she just delivered this performance. And then I was like, well, I think we have our older version of Kylie. And then I had somebody go into Photoshop and like kind of like do like a side by side and mesh their faces together, and they look almost alike with their noses and their lips and everything. So I like, well, I think that can definitely work, you know.
Mm. Well, this is for Lisa. For someone like Kylie and the other actors her age on the film, were they aware of the iconic work done by you and some of the other more established actors on the film? And was there any sort of sense of them being awestruck by you and the other actors, or, you know, asking for advice or anything like that?
Well, from my point of view, they didn't seem awestruck. They seemed very professional, and they were there to do their job, but also have a good time. They were respectful, but I think they were more respectful just because I was older. I mean, you know, the show was on so long ago. The real sweet spot of people or people that are in their, you know, 50s right now. So when I was on Survivor, nobody recognized me because they were all under 40. And so the younger kids, I mean, you know, that you can watch on MeTV, or you can watch on YouTube, or get the box set. But most kids, you know, they don't know who I am. I mean, when my kids were about that age, I had to say something like, um, I was kind of the Hillary Duff of my era. You know, I mean, I had to give them some kind of point of reference for
Sure.
who they would, you know, have thought was something special. But yeah, the kids were amazing, but you know, I don't think they were starstruck.
Well, Lisa, you said you didn't really interact much with the other, like, you know, classic actors, I guess. But is there some sense, like, you know, of fandom by you and them, like, you know, that you just want to go to them and like brush over their work as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, I was a kid in the 80s. I mean, so the same impact for me would be, you know, seeing these stars, and knowing that when I went to the theater just as a teen or a young, you know, in my early 20s, these were, you know, these were big celebrities. And so, yeah, it was absolutely not only respect, but a little bit of geekdom happening on my end.
Well, Richard, you've worked in the industry for a while. You've been a cinematographer on many projects. What was it like to make the transition into directing, and what sort of pressure came with it, especially considering you had such well-known stars in the cast?
Well, I've been like directing for like 10 years, like on and off. I did other features, some shorts and documentaries. But this was like the biggest directing challenge I've had at this level. It was a
Mm.
lot to undertake. You know, it's like, oh, here we have school teachers now who have this, we can't have, you know, the kids past a certain time. You know, it's always like, I think the worry for me was always like the time, how much time do we have left, and trying to balance out the day. Because, you know, eventually you have to start kind of like cutting shots. You know, you have to figure out what you're going to need to make the film work. So the producer part of my brain has to go really full motion nonstop. But I tell you, like, you know, in making the movie, the worry I had was this film could get very campy very fast. Like the dialogue can start to get campy, the delivery. But I think, you know, from the table read and then to the first day on set with everyone, I felt like we just kind of like controlled it and controlled the tone. And that was like my worry, was just like I have to steer the ship and make sure we stay on track, you know. Um, and like the first day we had, you know, Caden, Georgia, and Kylie and Roman with Lisa on set. And it was like this first rehearsal is going to determine how I'm going to have to weave in there and make sure we guide the ship correctly, because if it starts to get campy, the movie is not going to work. It's just going to be a
Mhm.
laughable film, you know. So I really just wanted to stay on track. And you know, all the child actors really just, I think they got it. They understood what I wanted, and it was just like, okay, now I don't have to do much guiding. I'm just going to let them go and get out of the way.
Mm.
Well, so you said you've been working in this for a while. So, like, who were some of your influences as filmmakers? And were there any directors that whose work you really try to emulate a little bit?
Well, yeah, I kind of like I've taken over my career. Just I've kind of watched and listened to a lot of directors talk and seen them on set and worked with some of them. And like for me, it's like my work ethic is I don't sit down. I'm always standing, or if I am sitting down, it's like I'm on my knees by the camera because I don't sit like a video village. I sit next to the camera so I can call out adjustments or like just be there and watching the actors. I don't want to be 200 feet away watching a monitor with everybody else. I want to be right there with them and feel part of it. And that's something that Nolan does. He just likes to be there and watch around, walks around with a monitor. And, there's people like, Spielberg who really did things back in the 80s that nobody did with the way the camera moves. He really told the story through the lens with movement, like a dollies or jibs. And that was something that I wanted to do on this film. Like we're don't have a studio budget, but we really brought in like Steadicam, we brought in a jib, we brought in dolly because I knew like this film had to look a certain way, and I really try to emulate the look of a lot of his films, with E.T. or Jaws, and like that was very important. So like those two directors, and even like Clint Eastwood, who he has like shorter days, but something that I learned from just stories about him was he never calls action. He says, whenever you're ready. So that's something that I always kind of took as like, it's a good thing to tell an actor because when you call action, it's like they have to just do it. Like, and it's like, maybe they're not ready yet. So I always tell them, whenever you're ready, just start, like whenever it's on your terms.
No, that's really outstanding because when I was working, there were a couple. The first AD would come to me, especially at Disney, and say, "I let us know when you're ready," and then I would say, "Oh, I'm good," or "Yeah, just give me a second," and then it was like, "Okay, I'm good to go," and then everything else went from there. And I really appreciated that. So that's an awesome little piece of advice for other directors, especially working with younger performers. But we kind of already know Lisa's answer to this because she's not a sci-fi fan. But Lisa, do you have any sci-fi films you're a fan of? And also the same for you, Richard. What are your some of your favorite sci-fi films?
I'm so not a sci-fi fan. I don't even know like which ones to put in that category. I mean, I loved E.T.
Okay, I was gonna say E.T. I'll throw you an easy one.
But I mean, it's just not. It's not a genre that I have watched very many films.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how about you, Richard?
Well, I think for me, I think sci-fi is a reason that I wanted to get into movies because my dad took me to see Star Wars when I was like 5 or 6. And I was just like blown away, like this was happening, on screen. So definitely like the original trilogy and Empire Strikes Back and E.T. and then Back to the Future is obviously like my favorite sci-fi film of all time. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody about like visual effects. I'm like, if you watch the film, there's maybe like 5 effects in the entire movie, but it's just like the idea of time travel that makes it a sci-fi film. Like there's really not a lot to it, but it's just like the perfect film because of the tone, and you really care about the actors. That's why everybody loves that film so much.
Mm.
I want to talk about the location, which in the movie it's called Space Rock. It's a real place in Navajo territory. So just from the trailer, it gave the film so much character. What made you choose that spot for filming, and what was special about it for you as a filmmaker?
Well, I'd seen this photos of Shiprock about 10 years ago, and then I just forgot about it. And then when we were, figuring out the storyline and I was, working back and forth on the script, I found a picture again of Shiprock, and I'm like, this place looks like an alien has crashed here. It looks like this is a real place where an alien might go. And it's pretty far away. So, we had to send like a drone team out there to get all the filming of Shiprock. But it just really resonated ideas for me whenever I was writing into the film. Like it just like it was like the idea of Area 51 being destroyed and that place like surviving and becoming what that once was based on the visuals of that place. And I've never been there myself. but I just felt like this is like a powerful place. And like, I mean, even the stories I've heard of people going there, just there's all this crazy energy there. And I'm like, it just has to be in the film. And that's just what I just really envisioned as being like the place where they all go to take their children or their loved ones and drop them off to the aliens. It just really was the place for me. So.
Mm.
Oh.
Well, you've also worked with people like Gordon Ramsay, Ringo Starr, Oprah Winfrey, seemingly very different personalities. What were those experiences like?
Well, it's funny because Gordon, people are scared of him to death, but he just likes to give everybody a hard time, and he's like one of the most like nicest human beings you'll ever meet. But it's all an act, for because people love when people yell on TV, so it's all an act, and he's very nice, and Oprah is very professional. When we filmed with her, we filmed with her during the pandemic, and she's very much like she comes in, and if you're not ready, she's gonna leave, and you're like, well, that's just out of your time. So you have to be like on point no matter what. So I really appreciated her work ethic as well. It's like you have me for an hour. Well, that's 5 minutes you just lost because you're not ready. So that's just how she is. And I'm like, I respect that. And Ringo Starr is like, one of the last Beatles alive. And when he came in, it was just like you felt like you were back in the 60s, and I could just hear all like the freedom rock songs playing because he's very like down to earth and peaceful, and he's like the modern day version of a hippie. But it was just amazing just to be in the room with him for an hour.
I'm curious, did either of you get to go out to Area 51, see anything at all?
I did not.
I didn't it was so funny, Rick, as you were talking about it and me saying, oh, I'm not into sci-fi. But the truth is, just yesterday, I took both of my daughters and my daughter-in-law for the weekend. We went to Joshua Tree and we went to the Integratron. We had the sound bath up there. They talk about the whole, the aliens coming and creating this, downloading the blueprint for this Integratron to this scientist and building it out there. And there's no, and that's like my 5th time being in that space. I absolutely adore the Integratron and the sound bath and all that. So there's obviously some kind of allure.
Well, what about you, Richard? Have you been there?
I have not been there, but it's on my list. I definitely like to, if I could ever find anybody who'd give me like a private tour, and not be executed, I would love to go with them. I feel like there are so many like top secret ways to get in there that you'll just never get in. But for sure, I'd love to one day.
Oh man, yeah. So, all right, for both of you, Lisa, you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but aliens, real or not?
You know what? I think that there probably are non-physical entities that are beyond the senses and our awareness, that perhaps the in our limited ability to understand what is beyond us, we have drawn this caricature of aliens. But I think that's probably just basically the best we can do with our limitations of our imagination to try to describe what is indescribable and probably beyond our capability of understanding.
Yeah. How about you, Richard?
Well, I mean, I feel like we're such a small planet in the world and the universe. I feel like there has to be more out there. I mean, I feel like there's so many galaxies that haven't even been discovered that will never get discovered. There's, there's black holes, there's all these planets they see all of a sudden years and years later. So I feel like there has to be other life form out there. I don't know if they're like us or they're different, but I feel like it has to, I mean, there just has to be. We can't be it.
Didn't the government just basically admit that there were last year, at the end of last year? It kind of like said, yes, there's things that's out there, but we're not talking about it really. So,
yeah, they do that all the time. But I feel like if people really knew the aliens could come here at any point, I think you would see a massive lineup at the gun stores, and people would start buying ammunition and be like, you know what, we got to protect ourselves and our homes for the aliens. And you get a lot of crazy people going out there. So it's probably best that we never really officially know,
So when does the film come out, and how can people follow it and both of you on social media?
Well, right now we're doing a festival run while we're still working out contracts for streaming. So that's right now it's just running through the festivals, but it should be out by this summer at the latest. And if you want to kind of follow, you can go to Roswell Delirium, Instagram or Facebook, and kind of catch up on everything that's happening and where to see it. So,
We'll include the links. Do you want to include your personal
oh
social
yeah, you
media
can.
links too?
Yeah,
Both
you
of
can
you?
you can follow me at Rick Bakewell, Instagram or Facebook. So.
Lisa?
Call me Lisa Whelchel, Instagram, Facebook, yeah.
Well, we know you both have limited time, so we want to thank both of you for coming on. And you're both welcome back anytime. And when the movie comes out, we'd love to have you back to discuss it. Lisa,
Sure.
we'd love to have you come on just to talk about your career. So if you're ever available, we'd love to have that. And just again, a very special thanks. We were looking forward to this.
Before we wrap, I want to just have a little personal note. I don't know that I don't know if you remember Ike, but Ike is the one who taught me how to drive a stick shift.
Oh no, I don't remember that.
Yeah. You
I
had
just
a
remember
little
you
VW
just-
bug. We did a Disney movie together, and he had a VW bug, and you taught me how to drive a stick shift.
Oh my gosh. Well, all I wanted to do was and you had a Trans Am, which
I
is
did. I had
which
a
is
Trans
my dream car, was my dream car. Well, awesome. That's
So
I
thank you. I'm a
did
great-
not
I'm a
remember that.
great,
Darn it. I'm so
manual
sorry.
driver, and it's because of you.
Well, I'm glad I was able to teach you something.
Again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Lisa Whelchel and Richard Bakewell. And please like, comment, subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.